Hello, everyone, and welcome to Budget 2023. I am CA Natasha, and today we are going to discuss only the very important budget amendments that affect a common man. So let's begin. The budget in brief. We will be seeing what are the changes in the rates of tax, TDS, TCS, and some other relevant changes. The very important amendment that has been proposed is the change in the new tax regime that we will be looking at. There is an amendment in the rebate, the income tax rates for companies, and there are a few amendments proposed in section 44 AD and ADA. Moving on, TDS on interest on listed debentures, TDS on online gaming, and a slight amendment also in the TCS section. And finally, we will be discussing the capital gain amendment proposed. Now, to begin with, the very important amendment that has been proposed is the amendment in the new tax regime. Let's see what does it have to say. So, up to 3 lakh of income, you will not be chargeable to tax. So the maximum amount of income that will not be taxable in the new tax regime is 3 lakh. 3 लाख से 6 लाख 5%, 6 लाख से 9 लाख 10%, 9 लाख से 12 लाख 15%, 12 लाख से 15 लाख 20% एंड 15 लाख के ऊपर 30%. इंडिया में प्रोग्रेसिव इनकम टैक्स मेथड यूज होता है, जिसके कारण हम स्लैब रेट्स फॉलो करते हैं. न्यू टैक्स रिजीम में ये स्लैब रेट्स प्रपोज्ड हैं. ऑल्सो दिस टाइम इन द बजट they have proposed कि if you are following the new tax regime, you will also be eligible for rebate under section 87A, provided your total income does not exceed 7 lakh rupees. Meaning, up to rupees 7 lakh, you will not be chargeable to tax. जी हाँ, 7 लाख की इनकम तक आपको कोई भी टैक्स नहीं लगेगा अगर आप न्यू टैक्स रिजीम फॉलो करते हैं. इफ यू आर फॉलोइंग द न्यू टैक्स रिजीम, यू विल नॉट बी अलाउड टू टेक एनी डिडक्शंस और एग्जेम्पशंस. दैट इज द ओनली कंडीशन टू apply the new tax regime. However, in this budget, it has been proposed that for salaried persons, standard deduction of 50,000 will be allowed also under the new tax regime. So, अगर आप न्यू टैक्स रिजीम फॉलो करते हो, आपके क्या क्या फायदे हो सकते हैं. एक तो जो आप ये स्लैब सामने देख रहे हैं, ये फायदेमंद हो सकता है. 7 लाख की इनकम तक आपको टैक्स नहीं भरना पड़ेगा. एंड प्लस अगर आप सैलरीड एम्प्लॉय हो तो आपको स्टैंडर्ड डिडक्शन 50,000 का बेनिफिट भी मिलेगा. और अगर आप एनपीएस स्कीम में एनरोल हुए हो और आपके एम्प्लॉयर वहां कंट्रीब्यूट कर रहे हैं तो आपको उसका भी फायदा मिल सकता है. सो आपके लिए कौन सा इनकम टैक्स रेट एप्लीकेबल है फॉर द इनकम अर्न्ड इन द फाइनेंशियल ईयर 23-24, which is from 1st April 23 to 31st March 24. ये है ओल्ड टैक्स रिजीम जो आपको ऑप्ट करनी है. डिफॉल्ट आपको न्यू टैक्स रिजीम एप्लीकेबल है जो हमने जस्ट अभी डिस्कस की. सो बेसिकली if you are going for the new tax regime, you have to let go all your deductions and exemptions. और अगर आप ओल्ड टैक्स रिजीम फॉलो करते हैं तो आपको सारे डिडक्शंस एंड एग्जेम्पशंस अलाउ होंगे. ये देखना इंपॉर्टेंट होगा कि आपके इनकम के हिसाब से आपको कौन सी टैक्स रिजीम ज्यादा फायदा देगी, यानी कि कम टैक्स भरना पड़े वो टैक्स रिजीम आपको ज्यादा फायदा देगी. अगर आप ओल्ड टैक्स रिजीम फॉलो करते हैं तो यू विल बी अलाउड ऑल द डिडक्शंस एंड एग्जेम्पशंस, बट उसके टैक्स रेट्स एंड टैक्स स्लैब्स थोड़े से अलग हैं. तो आपको दोनों कॉम्प्यूटेशंस करके देखना होगा कि आपके लिए ज्यादा फायदेमंद कौन सा है. एक एग्जांपल के तौर पे हमने यहाँ पे एक कॉम्प्यूटेशन बनाया हुआ है. In this, we are looking at the old tax regime by taking the major deductions into place. So, suppose I am a salaried person who is earning an income of 20 lakh. So, I will be allowed profession tax under the old tax regime, standard deduction of 50,000. I also have a housing loan on which I am paying interest, so I get a deduction for that. Moving on, I take deduction for ATC, that is my LIC premium mutual fund investments. I take a deduction under ATCCD2, which is for employer contribution. Then I go to ATD, I also take that deduction because under the old tax regime, I can take all the deductions. And the tax works out to be around 2,36,000 after taking into consideration all the major deductions. Now, if I take the new tax regime, again with the same income of 20 lakh, I will not get a deduction of profession tax. I will get the standard deduction. I cannot take deduction for interest on borrowed funds, that is interest on housing loan. Moving on, I cannot take the ATC deduction. However, I will get the deduction on employer's contribution to the NPS. No ATD deduction, and my tax works out to be 2,25,000 under the new tax regime. Now, if I take a scenario where I am following the old tax regime, however, I don't have a housing loan, or maybe I am not contributing to the fullest under the ATC, or I am not taking the ATD deductions, then how does it work out to be? In such a scenario where there is no interest on housing loan, ATC is not being fully utilized. So basically, all the major deductions are not being fully utilized. My tax works out to be 3,66,000. So now if I look at all of these three, I will have to see that which is more beneficial. As per the example right now, it can be seen that the new tax regime is more beneficial as the tax is only 2,25,000 on the income of 20 lakh, or rather on a salary of 20 lakh. However, now if there was an HRA instead of a housing loan, this computation, this calculation can be a little different. Of course, this would always be higher tax only where I am not taking all the deductions. उस केस में ओल्ड regime मुझे श्योरली फायदा नहीं देने वाली है. अगर मैंने सारे डिडक्शंस यूटिलाइज नहीं करे हैं तो यही सही होगा कि मैं न्यू टैक्स रिजीम फॉलो करूं. However, अगर मेरे पास HRA है या कोई और डिडक्शंस है जो कंसिडर कर किया जा सकता है, तो उस केस में शायद ओल्ड रिजीम ज्यादा फायदा करे. So it is very important that you work out your income under both the regimes and then come to a conclusion that what is more beneficial to you. Now, this we have discussed for the financial year 23-24, where the budget this year has proposed a few amendments and made the new tax regime more favorable. Now, I would like to repeat myself that new tax regime is the default regime for computing your income and tax. However, if you are applying for the old tax regime, believing that your old tax regime is more beneficial, in that case, you need to specifically opt for the old tax regime. Now, moving on, income tax rate applicable for the income earned in the financial year 22-23, that is 1st April 22 to 31st March 23. You would be wondering, why am I discussing this? No, I will not be discussing this in length. This is just to show you the comparison that how the new tax regime has now become more favorable. Earlier, this is how the tax slab was designed. However, now it has been changed. And if you are computing your income for the previous year and filing your return this year in July, then you need to again compute your income in both the regimes and see what is more beneficial for you. Then tax rate for domestic companies. If you are a manufacturing company, then you have the option to go for 25% or 15%. 25% if your total turnover or gross receipts for the previous year 21-22 is rupees 400 crore or less. 15% if you are a new establishment that has been set up on or after the 1st of October 2019 and begin your manufacture or production on or before 31st of March 2024. In such a case, the tax rate applicable for you is 15%. Now, For other domestic companies, it can be 22% or 30%. It would be 22% if you are not claiming any deductions or set-offs or depreciation. So it is like how we do the new tax regime for individuals. You can say this is a little similar to that. And so in that case, 22% of tax rate will be applicable to you. And for all other cases, tax on domestic companies applies at the rate of 30%. And in all of these cases, it would be surcharge as applicable and cess at the rate of 4%. Now, there is an amendment in section 44AD and ADA, which is presumptive taxation. Earlier, 44AD said that any individual or HUF who has a total turnover of rupees 2 crore or less can claim a profit of 8% of the total turnover of or gross receipts. And for receipts that are in a mode other than cash, that is through account pay, check or bank mode or online mode, for such profit would be 6% of the total turnover or gross receipts. Now, there is a proposal made under this section wherein they say, if the amount received in cash is less than 5% of your total turnover or gross receipts, the 2 crore limit will be exceeded to 3 crore. So, meaning अगर आपकी total turnover or gross receipts में 95% of it is in mode other than cash, in such a case, आपको 3 crore तक presumptive taxation apply होगा. Now, again, there is an amendment proposed in section 44ADA, which applies to professionals. Currently, the provision says that if the total gross receipts of the professional income does not exceed rupees 50 lakh, profit would be equal to 50% of the gross receipts. It is now proposed that if the amount received in cash is less than 5% of the gross receipts, the threshold of 50 lakh would be increased to rupees 75 lakh. TDS on interest on listed debentures. Currently, the interest on listed debentures was not falling in the purview of TDS. That is, TDS was not applicable, but it is proposed that TDS would now apply on interest on listed debentures. TDS on winnings from online games. Now that we know that online gaming is a lot in the trend, so it has been proposed that with effect from 1st of July 2023, TDS on the net winnings at the end of the financial year would be taxed at the rate of 30%. That is, TDS would apply on your net winnings. That is, whatever you have won and whatever you have lost, the net of it would be computed to calculate TDS at the rate of 30%. TCS on overseas tour package. Earlier, TCS was applicable on this, however, at the rate of 5%. It has now been proposed to increase this rate to 20%. Now, capital gain. So, if I sell a residential property and buy another residential property, the capital gains that I have earned on sale of the residential property would be allowed to be set off against the cost of the new residential property that I have purchased. This has been in the income tax earlier as well. However, there is a little amendment in this section. So now we know that there is already a deduction available on the capital gain that I earn on sale of residential property, which is reinvested in another residential property. Likewise, there is also a deduction of the capital gain that arises on sale of any other asset which has been reinvested in a residential property. Now, there is an amendment proposed here that if the cost of the new asset purchased, that is, if the cost of the new residential property purchased is more than rupees 10 crore, in such a case, the cost would be taken as rupees 10 crore and the excess would not be considered as the cost. So that's all about the budget amendments. Thank you very much for watching this video. Thank you.